Yeah, so like I was saying, 80 to 100 is a normal road style tire. Other tires will vary, they'll be lower, usually lower than that. And then, so you grab your pump and taking the valve, there's usually two types of valves. There's a Presta and a Schrader. And the Prestas are the little long skinny ones that you see, similar to this one. And then Schraders are a little bit more round, similar to that one. So you take your pump and you unscrew the valve core and place your pump on and then pull the tab up. And then you just place up to the recommended value. Once you get there, just remove your pump and then screw the valve core back in so you don't leak any air. And that's sort of the basics to the air component of the ABC Quick Check. The next component are the brakes. So you want to be able to stop when you're biking, especially through a city like Pittsburgh. You know, the first thing, just give them a squeeze and see kind of where they grab. And make sure you're not pulling it all the way to the handlebar because that won't give you very effective braking. So you just want to make sure they grab, and then you go ahead and spin your wheels, and that will make sure that they're not rubbing. If they're rubbing, if the brakes are crooked or your wheel's crooked, it could wear the brake pads up prematurely. And also give you increased drag while you're riding, and you know, be quite an annoyance to you. So go ahead and spin both of them. We're good. Some things, you know, let's say your brakes, you can pull them in really far. Some things you could do, there's little adjusting points called barrel adjusters, which allow you to make the brakes tighter, closer to the wheel, giving you better braking power. And by turning them left, that will effectively tighten the cable, giving you better braking. And those are the first two components. My coworker Jason is going to go over the next component for you guys.
So the last thing in the ABCs of biking is C, which stands for chain. And I think chain is pretty important, obviously, when talking about bikes because it's what makes your bike go. And I think some of the important things to look at for your chain are that it's spinning freely and that it's not getting caught in the wheel back here. Sometimes if your shifting's off, it will shift into your wheel, and it's not good to ride like that. And then the other thing is obviously lube. You want your chain to not be rusty, because rusty chains can snap and can cause injuries. So I'm going to show you guys how to lube a chain today really quickly. So we just have some wet lube here. You can use wet or dry lube, and like any bike shop will pretty much have lube and be able to steer you in the right direction. But you're aiming to lube the inside of the chain here. The inside of the chain is what moves and what causes friction between the two pieces of metal. So we're just going to try to aim to do one drop in between each of the chain links. And then sometimes it's helpful to try to spin the chain around and rub it in, and then take a towel and dry it off, because obviously excess lube just creates more debris and creates more areas that debris can get stuck. You can see all that came off the chain, so this chain was pretty dirty. And then the last thing we're going to talk about getting bike ready is lights. So I have two examples of lights here. I have a front light and a back light, and you can tell that this is the front light because it's white, and the red light's for the back. And then the other thing along with having lights is where to properly put lights. So for front lights, I recommend putting them somewhere on the handlebars that while you're riding the bike, the light will be effective for you to see in front of you. So I'm just going to put this one here and try to angle it down to where I think that when you're riding, it'll be in line with my bike and will be facing forward. And the red lights obviously go in the back. Same with cars. And I think a good place to put this is high enough up that your wheel won't be blocking it, and in a good way that cars can see. So obviously you can see this light is above the wheel, and any cars behind me will be able to see me when I'm biking and hopefully not hit me.
open up to questions. So kind of one more thing to wrap up. Those were the ABCs that will get you most of the way there. But you also just want to make sure everything's tight. You know, you want to make sure your handlebars are tight. They're not going to, you know, slip back and forth from the wheel. There's no play in the bearings in your headset here, as well as your pedals and your cranks. You want to make sure there's no lateral movement because that's going to give you some problems, and as well as, you know, your seat. So yeah, that's kind of how to get your bike ready. And then, you know, the other component is what you're wearing. So I believe this group going over that later. Yeah, I guess we'll open up to questions if anyone has any.
Yeah, we have a question from the chat, which is, if you don't have a bike stand like you have in the bike cave, how would you suggest people prop their bike up or set their bike up so that they can work on it without a stand?
So yeah, that's a good question. You know, as a college student, I don't have any of this stuff at my apartment or anything. A lot of the ABC quick check you could do right from, you know, right as the bike is on the ground. You could still spin the cranks around to, like Jason showed, he spun them backwards to lube the chain. And, you know, you could also access your brakes and everything. If you needed to work on it, it could be a little bit tricky. So you need to work on something with your wheel or your cranks. You could flip it upside down. It's a good way. It's a little disorienting, but it does get the wheels off the ground, able to be worked on, as well as your pedals. It gives you better access. So something like that is a solution that I use. Any others?
If you have a question, you can also unmute yourself. But I know a common question is what makes the rubbing sound like for brakes, and how can you fix a squeaky brake?
Yeah. So I noticed.
You're muted.
Yeah. So squeaky brakes and noisy brakes, that's, you know, one of the biggest things we get in here. It's a lot of, you know, commuter bikes that are out in the elements a lot. I like to definitely clean the rim. I like to use like an alcohol wipe that kind of really cleans the rim off. And the brake pads, I notice they start squeaking and make noise when they get old and they kind of get hard. Like the rubber compound sort of gets a little more dense than it usually is when it's new. So what I like to do is,
where's that on the bike?
So the brake pads, yeah, like I mentioned, can, you know, there's supposed to be a nice soft compound to brake on the rim surface here. And I notice, you know, if they're out in the weather or something like that, they could kind of harden up, and the outer layer gets very hard, and that's what I notice makes a lot of noise. So what I like to do is I'll take the wheel out. So you can take it out. There's different ways to do it, but this one is a quick release, and you can open it up and loosen it and then slide the wheel out. So what I like to do in a case like this is I'll take some sandpaper and actually rub the surface of the brake pad, and that sort of gets that top really hard layer off and exposes some of the better material underneath.
Any other questions from people? You can either type them in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask it. And we're happy to answer. So when's the best time to do an ABC quick check?
The best time is, I like to do it before every ride. You know, if I pull my bike out and I'm getting ready to go somewhere, I'll just give it a quick look. You know, nothing loose or anything. So yeah, just kind of run through it. I usually do it almost every time I ride. Usually there's not an issue, but that's why we do it, to make sure there's not an issue.
Yeah, I don't think you can really do it too much.
Yeah, things will, I've had things come loose once and never again, and I don't know why they came loose or, what happened, but, like I said, that's why we like to go through it and make sure everything's running properly.
So you should do it in the morning, like before you ride and on the way home. And if the tube rubs as part of the brake, is there a way to check that? And is there any tweaks to that you can like do out while you're out on the road?
What was it? Sorry, could you repeat
Any
that?
tweaks that you could do out while you're out on the road?
For brakes that you mentioned?
I think she said it rubs the tube.
Can you say that one more time, Anna?
Yeah, so if the tire rubs, like as part of the brake, kind of like the rim, is there anything that you can tweak while you are out biking that could help while you're, commuting?
Yeah, so there's a few things you could do, and some of it depends on, what style of brakes you have. A lot of that is going to be the brake pad position. So these brake pads, there's some adjustability here. You can move the pad up or down, depending on what sort of wheel you have in there, and you want to line up right on the rim, or the braking track on the rim rather. So if it's rubbing and you don't have a tool, these sort of brakes, like a road style caliper brake, you can actually pull them back and forth a little bit to sort of get it out of the way. If it's rubbing on one side, not the other, you can kind of recenter it, because they are only held on just by one bolt on the back right here. And, if you do have a tool, that's all the better. You'll be able to loosen it, and then, it's easier to adjust, and then you could reposition it. Same with the brake pads. Say it's really high up here and it's rubbing on your tire. You could take a tool, an Allen key, and a multi-tool is really handy to have on the road with you. They're usually, somewhat inexpensive, but they'll get you a long way. And then you could reposition your pad just like that.
Thank you.
Like I said, and to kind of elaborate on that, a multi-tool will get you almost everything on your bike. Generally with, bikes that are not even super modern bikes, but a lot of bikes I've noticed will have, or a lot of multi-tools will have everything you need on it to fix almost anything on your bike.
So do you have an example of a multi-tool, and what should someone look for in a multi-tool when they're buying one?
Yeah, I think we do have one in here. Jason
On my back. So.
is maybe looking for it. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. So they'll usually have a lot of the Allen key sizes, because those are very common to fix things, and then a few more tools. They might have a little set of pliers on them, and let's see here.
Chain breaker tool is another thing they might have. So like if your chain, you were having an issue with it, sometimes they'd have a way you can fix your chain. And even things like little wrenches too, for some older bikes have bolts instead of like something that could be accessible with an Allen key.
Yeah, and a lot of them are very similar. They're all pretty close in what they offer. Some might have more complex things on them than the others, but they'll all have the basics that you need. Any other questions?
There's one coming in. I can tell they're typing. Okay, so the question is, what essential tools should people always have? You just mentioned like the multi-tool, but should you have like a Swiss Army knife or duct tape or like other things? Like, is there like a little something that you would recommend people carry?
Yeah, there are a few essentials. So like I version, the multi-tool with all the Allen key heads, like before, and also they'll have, screwdrivers on them. Another very, very handy tool Jason's getting out right now. This is related to the air component of the ABC check. So this is a tire lever, and if you flat, these are going to be great to help you to remove your tire, because sometimes the tires, they have a bead in them that hooks onto the rim to keep the tire where it needs to be. And we'll demonstrate that for you and how to use one of these. Just a second. Just take a minute.
Uh-oh, is that a flat? Uh-oh,
That is a flat.
that's a flat. That's a flat.
So yeah, we got a flat tire.
Oh, no.
So like I was saying, with these tire levers, there's this bead here and it's almost attached in a way. So you have to pop it out. And then the challenging part is getting it actually off the rim because it's pretty tight on there. So you take this, the tire lever, and stick it under one side after so you want to pull it to one side so you can see the inside of the rim. Stick your tire lever in and then pull it all the way down. And that's going to give you a good leverage point. Push or pull, whichever you prefer. And then it'll slowly work the bead off. And then you can go all the way around. Like that. So these are super handy to have if you run into a flat tire, as well as a patch kit. Jason can go over what's in those.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt.
We're filming right now. Just give us 5 minutes.
Yep.
But so this is a patch kit, and I think this is almost as important as having tire lever. I would just try to carry anything like an extra tube and a patch to maybe fix a flat on the road because they are quite common. And like the instant the tire lever just makes it a little more easy to change the flat. But inside of a patch kit, you can often find patches that look like this, and they sometimes even come with glue to glue the patches on, and then sandpaper as well. And these sort of things are only really temporary solutions because ultimately you should just get home and put a fresh tube in if you can. But I think that along with the multi-tool, I think that either a spare tube or a patch kit is the second most important thing they could have on you when you're on a ride.
Additionally to that, you want to be able to inflate your tire on the road. So they do have different types of pumps and inflating devices. There are small hand pumps, and then there's also the use of CO2 now. There will be a little chuck that kind of looks like the end of a pump, but instead of a pump on the end, you'll screw your CO2 into it. We unfortunately don't have one on hand, but interesting. So this is actually Jason's personal kit that he brings with him, so he can go over what's inside of it.
Yes, this is like I said about everything I try to bring on a ride. So like Dan said, we have the little tire lever. I have an extra tube here just in case I get a flat, and then this is that CO2 thing we were talking about. So CO2 is kind of two main components. It's a little adapter here that will press onto the valve right here. And then this CO2 is it's like a little cartridge that has, I guess, air in it. But one thing to watch out for if you choose to use these to inflate your tires, that they get really cold. So a lot of times people recommend like folding up your shirt to put it on, or to try to only hold this part and not hold the CO2 cartridge at all, because it'll get really, really cold and will give you frostbite. But so yeah, whenever I ride, I try to carry some patches like I have in this little bag. And then I actually don't have a multi-tool, but I have some little kind of sized tools, enough tools to work on the main issues I would come up with myself or with my bike on a ride.
Okay. This is Nick, the cameraman. I do have a question. You mentioned a spare tube. I've always wondered how do I tell what's the right size for a tube? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So most tubes will say, so usually near the label, it'll say like the brand, and then it'll say 2 measurements here, and it gives you the European and then like the standard version, I guess. So this one's a 700 by 28C. So when you go to the store, you can get a 700, and then that'll be like the size of the wheel, and then the thickness of the actual tire, like the width will be the second number after the X. So this one's 28. And then any tube, most commonly, I think it'll be a 25 to 28 that'll fit for your bike. But if you go to a shop with your tube or can look on your rim, they should be able to tell you.
thank you. All right, any other questions for folks on the call, in the session?
Sherry, I just wanted to give you a moment if you have any questions. I know you just joined. We went over an ABC quick check earlier. And we also went over some tools that people carry on a ride to do some emergency fixes. But if you have any questions about making sure your bike is ready, feel free to ask them, or if you want them to go talk about an ABC quick check real quick, they could probably say that, and I can share a video to how to do that as well as this is being recorded. So feel free to ask a question, anyone, if you have them. We'll probably stay on here for a few more minutes, but also wrapping it up. Looks like there are no more questions, but I don't know if you have any final tips for people as they are new riders starting to bike commute. If you have anything to make sure your bike is safe and comfortable to ride. Final thoughts.
Yeah, so I guess kind of to wrap it up, like we said, you want to go through that little quick check. A lot of times you'll notice as soon as you get on your bike, even if you don't ride far, you'll notice something's off. Your brakes aren't working correctly, your pedals aren't spinning very smoothly. So you can use some of those tips that we went through to kind of try to pick it apart and diagnose what's going on. Yeah, and then you always want to have your little bike kit with you. If you're able to do so, you'll have your tube and your tire repair tools, as well as your multi-tool or any other small tools that you want to carry with you while you ride.
Great, thank you. And thanks everyone for attending. There are 2 other sessions today. The next one will be at 2, which is in just a half an hour, about how to accessorize your bike, how to carry things and how to dress for it. And then later at 4:30 is what to wear. So dressing for success. And as you can see there, the Pit Bike Cave is open Monday, Thursday, and Friday. Monday and Thursday, 1 to 4, and Friday, 12 to 4. So visit them at Pit in Posvar Hall in the pass-through, kind of where the French fry statue is. They are there and able to help you. And also please come on Thursday at Pit. They will be having, they'll be open at the farmer's market with some helmets. And then on Friday, we're going to have a huge bike fair at Shenley Plaza right in front of where the merry-go-round is. And we'll have a bunch of bike vendors, e-bike demos, tune-ups will be available for your bike, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So please stop by. And that on Friday, that is from 12 to 4. There's also going to be a bike train that morning, leaving from Morningside to get into Oakland. And then in the afternoon at 4:30, there will be another group bike ride with the Bike Cave, leaving from Shenley Plaza. So come and join us, and I'll put the link to how to sign up to the rest of that stuff in the chat. And thank you, Bike Cave. Is there anything else you would like to say? And thanks everyone for attending.
No, it's just thanks for tuning in.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See ya. Happy biking. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to stop recording.